So welcome to episode 6 of the Just Run podcast. As I always say, just want to say thank you very much for all of our previous listeners. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, it was a banger with Lewis Roblin. He told us all about his journey from professional rugby player to endurance athlete. And that dude is full of useful information. He's like a human quote generator. So if you've not listened, check it out. Also, quickly wanted to talk about the competition that we're still running. So with our friends over at the Mad Running Junkies, you can be in for a chance to win, you and a running buddy, a free entrance to their Hateful Eight running competition, which means you run 8-mile loops for 8 hours or until you drop. Just like and follow this Just Run podcast and Mad Running Junkies. Tag any of your friends and we'll announce the winners on the 23rd of February. And on this week, we're joined not just by one, but two of our wonderful resident guests, ultra coach and runner Jen Humphreys, fresh off the Pyrenees Mountains, and ultra coach and physio wizard Sophie Vecchioni. Hello, how are you guys?
Hello.
Hi.
You guys okay? How are you? Are you all fully recovered now, Jen, from your skiing trip?
Getting there. I've got a bit of a lingering cough. I think I just had too much fun, maybe. But yeah, it was worth it. But yeah, we're getting there.
Good. And so if you've recently moved and everything, physio studios and everything, has that all gone smoothly?
Yeah, no, Tops has moved clinic, which is really fun, and it's really nice. But classic Monday going in and just not knowing where anything was. So I was just running around like a headless chicken all day. But no, it's really good getting settled.
Awesome. And Nate, are you down in Pembrokeshire? You talking to us from West Wales?
I am, yeah, down my parents. I'm doing a bit of a recce down here, so on the coastal path. Because there's a couple of the bits of the coastal path which is falling away. So I wanted to check them out and see if I needed to do a decent detour and speak to FKTs about it. But I see nothing today.
Nice. Are you fully recovered? Obviously, we know previous weeks you've been pretty rough and everything. Is you running back up now, or?
Yeah, did 60 miles Sunday, but it was more like ice skating. I think I went over 3 times onto my back, like the sticky bandits from Home Alone. Did 21 miles today. Yeah, so feeling okay.
Good man. Nice. Good. Well, I best, before we dive in, just to say, well, first of all, it's National Girls and Women's in Sports Day, which is ironic, as today's episode will be about women who run. And before we dive in, I just want to say, more listeners, that we'll be discussing some sensitive topics. So just as a heads up, it might be triggering for anyone who listens. But I also want to reassure you that today's episode, we want to try and make it as positive as possible. But, you know, by trying to help our fellow runners and raise awareness and trying to do anything we can to help. So, yeah, I hope you enjoyed the episode. And I guess we'll kick off. Just we can ask the girls some questions and for their insight. And the priority is for women to feel safe. So the first question straight off the bat is, what can we do to help, really? And that's obviously aimed at anyone.
Gosh, I mean, it's well, like you said, it's a very important topic. And I mean, what can we do to make you feel safe is obviously quite a big question. So I think a big thing for women, I know, Jen, we've discussed this and we discussed with the guys, is kind of one of the biggest barriers we find for women in running is in the dark. And not feeling safe enough to run in the dark. So I just tend to not run in the dark at all, just because it just makes me feel really uneasy. And I should say caveat, I've been very fortunate. I mean, because I don't really run in the dark, I haven't had any horrendous experiences, but I've just had some that I've not felt great about. I suppose the other day I went for a run during sunset because I thought, it'd be really nice, take my dog in the sunset, and basically just very quickly set and was pitch black, and I had all my running kit on for it, but there was just one person who kind of followed me through a sheep gate, and then I kind of kept checking back, and then he very quickly disappeared, and I kind of did a there and back, and came back again, and that person wasn't there anymore. So situations like that, I think your brain as a woman just automatically goes into overdrive, and the whole rest of the run I was like looking out for them. But I mean, my error, I think, and one thing that I think is a really good point for how people can like just look out for themselves in those situations, is I went on a trail run, which probably wasn't the best idea because it was dark. So I totally got home and was like, why did I do that? And it shouldn't be the case, because I should be able to go and run. I don't know about you guys, but do you run in the dark, guys?
Nathan, go on, mate.
Only streets. I'd never do trails in the dark, unless, well, yeah, I haven't. No, I don't like using my head torch because it just bounces out too much. So I tend to like run on the streets with the street lights.
Yeah,
I was actually running back from work the other day, and I seen two 20-year-olds coming up to me, and as I got past them, one of them sort of like jumped out and sort of like wanted me to react. Like he was like, boo. And that made me think, Christ, what if that was a woman?
Yeah.
Like, it even happens to sort of like men, just people just being idiots.
Yeah. I've had it. I'm not ashamed to admit that I don't like running in the dark. I do it because, as we all know, we've got to try and, get out when we can, whether it's early morning or late at night. Sometimes with work and family commitments, it just has to happen that way. One thing I would recommend is don't make the mistake I did and wear your head torch when the battery's not fully charged, because that doesn't help. I was on a run around Penarth, and I decided to go a bit, onto the trails. And as I got through the gates into a bit of a coastal section, my head torch was flickering and dying. But I was already in the midst of pitch black, halfway through a trail, and I got my phone out and used the torch on my phone as a backup. But let's just say I can imagine my pace spiked on Strava at that section because I picked my pace up. I was and I had, what was really funny, is I say really funny now, at the time I was shaking like a leaf, but I saw two eyes looking at me and then dart off, and it was obviously a fox or something because it was too small to be anyone. But in the back of my head, that played so much of a game with me that the whole run was kind of ruined. But like you said, I've run around Butte Park and stuff like that early in the morning, and just before Christmas, I could hear someone shouting and footsteps behind me, because I always turn my music down when I'm running in the dark. So again, that's another tip. Don't have your music blaring or use what they call aftershocks, because it's safer. You can hear someone coming up behind you. It could be perfectly innocent, like another runner, but it's just better to have that awareness. And yeah, these two guys who were there were just shouting at me, and I have it quite often where they end up, they try to race you, and it's not nice. It's whether it's the middle of the day or the night, you never know what those people are going to do or what they're going to try. So yeah, I don't like it that much. I will avoid the dark if I can, but sometimes it's unavoidable.
Jen, what about you?
I think a huge part of it is just having these conversations, and having the conversations without fear. So obviously the reason that we're talking about this, and the reason that the reason that we as a team decided to spend an episode talking about this is because it's brought to light in the winter months when they're colder and darker. And like Sophie's just pointed out, that's 6 months of the year. And running for me, like when you go to a running event, what I always really love when I turn up to a marathon or whatever event is, it's like mixed, and you stand on the start line, men and women next to each other, like everyone together, there for the same objective, to like have a good time because they love it, to push themselves. And that's what I always love about this, like ultra running. I love the fact that men and women stand on the same line, they talk, they have a lovely time. I've mostly made friends with my male friends I've made while I'm out running, and I love it. And I think then bringing it back to this conversation is what is so important, that like this community is such an example of where men and women have exactly the same right to be in exactly the same space. And in the summer, admittedly, like my thinking about my safety kind of goes like it does dissipate hugely. Like I trained all of summer last year and didn't really think about it. But then we get to September, October, and I start to think, oh God, like I'm going to have to wake up early or do it after work. And then the worry kicks in. So I think, but obviously that problem exists all year round. It's just that we are more hypersensitive to it at certain times of year. So I think just opening, like the best that we can do is just have these conversations to I think make fellow female runners understand that they're not alone if they go out and they're a bit worried. Like I have female friends who want to start running and it'd be like, oh, but I really don't want to start in the winter. And like just having that conversation with me, who's been running for 4 years now and has fortunately never had anything like particularly bad happen, and I would never ever like sorry, I've got a cough, there it is. I would never let anyone think their experience is lesser, but like, you know, whatever it is, some people have unfortunately had really horrific experiences, and you do often hear about the really horrendous ones. And like I want to just make sure that we understand that like men and women can sit in the same room and have this conversation, and that every male runner and all of my male friends care about this. Like I'm very fortunate that I have men in my life who will go, are you back from your run? Like have a good run, let me know if you're like. And I think it's just a solidarity thing, which I think is so important, in the same way you have solidarity when you turn up to a start line and you get over a finish line. So this conversation is just a good discussion for everyone to have, so that everyone's aware that their female friends are worried about it, you know, like, you know, so your husband, like he will be acutely aware that you're concerned about it. And I think us having this conversation makes men, or anyone, for example, like literally teenagers, other women, men, whoever it is, just more aware that when you see me out running in the dark, I probably haven't got my music in, whereas in July or August I would. And like just being aware of that kind of hypersensitivity, I think can really benefit both. It can help me feel more comfortable, and also I think a huge part of it is like it can help you understand, like as a male, like my brother would always say, like he just walks slightly further to the left of the pavement, so he makes it really clear that he's not standing behind, or like he's, you know, it's just an important thing for all runners to be aware of, to make the safe, like the streets as friendly for everyone as they should be. So yeah, I think that's how I look at it.
I think definitely, and I think following from what you said, Jen, it's about, you know, having that open discussion so people know what makes people feel uncomfortable. So like you said, as a woman, I hate the thought of someone being directly behind me. So whoever you are, male or female, you know, if you're running behind someone or you're walking behind someone, you know, thinking about how that person could be feeling and adapting your behavior for that is, you know, it's not big things, it's, you know, maybe cross over the road or just little changes. But like you said, it's about whoever the person is, just putting yourself in their shoes and thinking about how you can make them feel more comfortable.
I agree.
And also, I genuinely feel like this about all runners, because I do always think, like, this is obviously specific to women's safety, but I don't know if anyone else has noticed, like, since COVID, like, like when you run past someone, they like look at you like this, because you're obviously like breathing quite heavily. And I did find after COVID, people were super like, don't come near me if you're a runner. And like I think it's a bit same, like I'm always hypersensitive, even if I'm just like, to be honest, I'm hypersensitive if I'm around like an elderly person when I'm running, because I'm like, I've got a bit of a cold and I don't want to be like breathing on them. So I think it's just like giving each other space for reasons beyond just safety are important as well. But yeah, I'm always caught out in Tooting Common when like some like lovely person is just walking their dog behind me, and I'm like this, like checking, and they're just probably trying to enjoy their dog walk, but having this conversation, like they probably wouldn't have thought, oh, she thinks I'm following them. So like just making people more aware that that's a type of behavior that like it's just helpful to like alter, I think is a really positive thing to do.
I mean, it's giving space, it's courtesy, isn't it? I mean, it's I don't know about you guys, but the amount of time that I've jumped where runners have run past me, and I've been like, oh, you know, they've just escaped. And it's one of those things where you just kind of you turn around and when you're running, like in the past, what I've done is if there's a woman walking a dog or a guy walking his dog or anybody in front of me, or I can see they've got headphones in, I'll often like shout to your right, to your left, or I'll do something like that if there's not enough space, or I'll make the effort of going into the middle of the road safely, obviously making sure there's no traffic, and just going around them and kind of, or whatever it is, just give them that little bit of space, because it's not nice. Yeah, it's almost like common courtesy. I just wanted to ask a question actually, because one of you said something that raised something in my head. Just out of curiosity for you guys, when you're running, do you feel like there's a lot more prep that goes into your runs? Like, because I don't want to put a gender on this specifically, but obviously this episode is about having a conversation around, women's safety when you're running. But do you think that you have to think a lot more, like in the winter months, perhaps, about the route you take or who you run with?
Yeah, I thought the same thing, Reese. Like the whole route would change, wouldn't it? So it might change your actual training plan as well.
Yeah, like completely. So like perfect example of this is like I have a 10K running route near my house. It's perfect 10K and I love it. But in the dark I can't, well, I can. I don't know if I can do it safely, but I just won't do it. And like, so for example, last night, I'd procrastinated the whole day away because I didn't want to go running. I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to go in the dark. And the whole point is I then sat there trying to think of I basically call it street light chasing. So like my route last night is like me going around in circles because I could see where the street lights were and where they ended. So like I didn't get to do the run that like I would have wanted to do. And it was 5:30 in the evening. It's just dark. And like Soph said, obviously I think with trails, anyone going out on trails in the dark, like that's a safety decision that people make. But I do see like lots of men going out for running on the trails in the evening with all the headlights and stuff, and like they probably are more than safe. And I think that the biggest thing to do is they are probably more than safe to do so, just like me. Like the chances are you probably are safe to go, but it's that level of worry that would stop you doing it that always, it's that like barrier to access. And I think for me, that's what like the biggest thing around this whole conversation is for me, is how many women don't feel like they get to start because of this barrier. And I think that's a massive thing. Like with women in sport, we want to be encouraging as many women and young girls and women into sport as we can. But if for 5 months a year they don't feel like they can, then that's obviously massively reducing their opportunity.
I think as well, like the big thing with, I'm hugely privileged in that I have a gym and I have gym access. So during winter months, I tend to plan a lot more of my runs on the treadmill. So yeah, for example, if I know at the moment I've got to do an evening run, I'll be like, okay, well, what day of the week can I go to the gym and go onto a treadmill? But a lot of people don't have gym access. And the beauty of running is that it is supposed to be accessible for everybody. Like anyone can go out and run. But for women in the winter, it potentially for lots of people becomes inaccessible because they're like, well, I can't go to the gym. I don't have gym access. So it's definitely, I think it just makes it, like you said, a lack of accessibility thing. But you do definitely have to, in terms of going back to your question, in terms of do you have to think more about your training? Like, yeah, definitely. Like I was running up a hill on a treadmill the other day. I was joking about, I don't know if you saw the Killian's video of him sprinting up a treadmill, and I was like, I'm going to do that. And it was like, like plodding. But do you know what I mean? I couldn't do it. I didn't feel safe going out and doing a hill run. So there was me on my treadmill. So yeah, definitely.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because you said something then, actually, Jen, about how you procrastinated the whole time. And I've been there and done that, where I've been in work all day thinking, I got this awesome route. I know exactly how long it is. I know how long it's going to take me approximately, and I'll come home and everything. But it's dark, and what if my head torch runs out, or this? And you start procrastinating so much. And the thing is, running is so good for me and for all of us. I think I can vouch in terms of mental health. But then when you find yourself down that rabbit hole and you start overthinking the routes and that it's not safe, it then actually contradicts the mental health side of it, because it becomes disheartening and you might end up not even running.
Well, I think me and Soph had this conversation about her experience the other day. You just don't enjoy the run. Like you spend half the run not switching off, thinking about something else, and you get home and you're a bit like flustered, and you're like, oh, it completely removes the experience of the reason that you started running in the first place. And like you said, Reece, you get that same feeling, like it just, that on edge feeling, it means you don't get the freedom that you deliberately put your trainers on to go and get.
Yeah.
I think as well, I don't know how you feel, but like if ever I've been in a situation, like the 2 times I've kind of been in situations like that where I felt like recently uncomfortable, afterwards I was like, had this kind of guilt, like, oh, I'm an idiot, like why did I do that, I shouldn't have done that,
They were probably like, not going to do anything, I'm just overreacting.
Yeah, exactly, like I shouldn't put myself in those situations. And it's like, well, yes, that, real world and stuff, but equally that just shouldn't, in a perfect world that just wouldn't be the case, and we could all go out and enjoy, whenever we wanted to. But like you said, I come home feeling guilty, right? And I cut my run short, just like all those things. And it was like, I actually was really looking forward to going and doing a nice run, and in the end it wasn't.
Yeah, or it doesn't happen at all, in which case I've been there before, where I've got all my stuff ready and I've thought about it, or I should say I've overthought it so much to a point where I've built up so much anxiety about even going outside the door when I wasn't lucky enough to have gym access, that I've not even gone. And then I just kick myself all night, and I'll be in a mood all night and a proper stinker. My wife will recognise it, and I'll just be like, I just should have gone. I built it up all day. I really was looking forward to it. And then, so it can play off that as well. You can ruin your run, or you might not even leave the house. And it's crap that has to happen. And I mean, thinking about that, then we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I mean, is there any equipment or specific pieces of kit that you'd recommend then for female runners? Like I said, for the sake of this episode, we are focusing on that. So, to invest in making you feel safer, really, or
so like there are things that we've kind of already touched on. So things like a head torch, or I think it's about making yourself, like, I think this is a really interesting one actually, and Soph really raised this question with me when she told me the other day, and it got me thinking so much, because I'd not thought about it before. But like the slight like difference between, you want to make yourself as visible as possible, but then you also want to make yourself invisible at the same time, which I'd never thought about before she said it, because like you don't want to draw attention to yourself, because then no one knows you're there. Which now I often think about when I'm out running, but like that should not be the case. Like we should not be in a situation where we're basically thinking I should be completely dark so that no one can see me. So I'm going to go, like, we should be wanting to make ourselves as visible as possible. That's also just like for cars and all the other things that mean you should be visible. So like with that in mind, like this is for all runners, but for women, I would never like personally choose to go out without a head torch, whether that be a head torch or a chest, like a chest strap one, or kind of one of the high vis light things that like look like a big glow stick that you can wear. But the head torch obviously gives you the visibility in front of you to help you to be able to see in the dark. But if you don't need a head torch because you're in a street lit area, the body ones are just really useful for just being able to make yourself seen. And personally, like I have had a situation before where I've wanted to call attention, and it's helped because I've been wearing something that people don't just think there's like a random person shouting at them in the wind. They can actually see somebody, so that's always really helpful. And then like general high vis and stuff, without the one you can carry alarms, and I always feel really mindful around this conversation, because that is obviously like a very personal choice, and that a lot of women will choose to do that because they've had an experience that's made them more hypersensitive. I personally don't carry one. I have often thought about one, but I have never quite got to the point where I feel like I need to. But I think every person should feel like, if that gives them, like, I think it's a comfort thing, like, that sense of security, that if you need it, you have that on you. And you can get some really easy small handheld ones that just send off a sound alarm or something, so that you can really easily bring attention to whatever situation you found yourself in. You can tuck them in your pocket, you can hold them in your hand. But yeah, like I feel very fortunate that I have never felt like I need to go out with one. But I do think, especially like I have friends who like live in the countryside, who, if something did happen, they're, you know, in London, I often find it's a bit of a mental game, because you feel like there's so many people around that you're at threat, but also there's so many people around that if something happened and you were to just literally shout out loud, people around you can see and hear you. Whereas if you live in like quite a rural, quiet area, having something that makes a loud noise could probably be quite helpful, because it would bring more attention to yourself if you're in an area where people otherwise can't see you so easily. But yeah, like lightwear and an alarm are the two key things that I would think about. But so I don't know if there's anything else that you use.
I tend to run holding my phone. So normally I normally run with my like running pack and have my phone in my pocket. But if I am going a bit later, I tend to run holding my phone, because you know you can set your lock button to do an emergency call, like from just pressing it, so you don't have to like unlock your phone or press 999 or anything like that. And you can also set up, you know, like emergency calls to relatives on your phone. So I think just having your phone to hand, so if you were in a situation where you felt uncomfortable, you could immediately call someone. They're on the end of the phone listening to the situation, and then they can, you know, alert if heaven forbid you would ever need to alert emergency services. But you know, that's a very quick, easy way, and then you don't have to faff like trying to find your phone, pulling things out. I guess that would be the only other thing. But yeah, agree with you on everything else.
Yeah, the phone thing as well. So when I first started running in lockdown, I never ran with my phone. I used to just run with my watch, and I don't know, in COVID, I think I had I was down in Pembrokeshire with a very false sense of security, because literally I would go on a run and not see a single soul for like 2 hours, because everyone was obviously inside. But ever since, like, if you have a phone, and it means you can find my iPhone. And like it's funny because I use that in races so that like my parents can just see where I am along the course. But if you know you have a partner at home that can then just know, like you can say to them, I'm going out for an hour, and if you're not back on time or whatever it is, they can easily see where you are. And like, I think that's obviously a personal choice within your couple or whatever. Like it might be your mum or your sister or your brother or whatever, or your roommate. That's like a really key technology that makes it so much easier for people. And I do wish that some of the like wearable, you know, your Garmins and stuff, they do have that technology, but it's not as easy. And I would love to see them roll something out that's a lot simpler to use, so that, you know, I could send an alert to someone's phone that I've gone on a run, and it will alert them when I'm done. I think that would just be such an amazing feature to have. Because also I don't have an iPhone, so I can't actually find my iPhone, so I just have to share my location with people. But if Garmin were to bring out something that you could just say like send notification to XYZ that you've gone out, I just think it would be such a great feature. It would make me feel a lot safer just knowing that someone has been like alerted if I was going out in the dark.
Because on Garmin they've got, you can have like run buddies almost, can't you? Like you can follow,
and like a beacon, whatever. I literally have no idea what that is. I've had a Garmin for years and I don't know how it works.
No, there's also a thing as well, because I know if you're on a bike and if you suddenly come to an abrupt halt, it has like injury detection. So I want, maybe we should look into it. But yeah, I wonder what the feature is, because like you said, even if it's just a button that sends the alert to your emergency contact, like I've got my husband as my emergency contact on my Garmin, but you know, is there a way that I can just, like you said, click a button and it send a message to him?
There must be. I think there is something. I think what you're talking, there is something I always set up when I'm going on really long runs, or if I'm going late at night or early in the morning. You've got the live, you can live track it, and you can set auto so that the minute you leave, and it's funny because I forgot to turn it off the one day, and every single run I went on throughout the week, my mum kept texting me saying, "Why am I getting notifications?"
Oh, interesting. I can't do that on mine. Maybe it's a model thing.
Well, mine is quite an old
I've got
Garmin.
quite a basic one.
Yeah, same. Mine's the Forerunner. I can't remember what the actual model is. I'll let you know. But I mean, yeah, you can set it on the actual Garmin app on your phone. You go into, I think it's emergency settings or assistance, and then you click live link, and you can add people's email addresses or numbers and click it to auto. Or you can put it on if you going out doing a particularly long run early in the morning or late at night, and it'll automatically text them, because when I've done ultras and marathons, my mum and dad and my wife and my emergency contacts, they can all see where I am. And
that's so helpful. I'm going to look into that because
Yeah.
I might be calling for Garmin to do something that literally already exists.
yeah,
Other watches are available though.
oh yeah, other
Yeah,
watches are
yeah.
available. One thing I will say, Nate, you might remember this. It's funny because you said about the injury detection, Soph,
Yeah,
and it's true.
thinking about Mike here.
Yeah, with the minute you come to a halt. So I've actually had it happen to me. I fell over on a run around the bay. I twisted my ankle badly and it bloody hurt. And I hit the deck and my phone just immediately started flashing. Luckily enough, I stopped it with about 3 seconds spare before it went through the emergency services. But or your emergency contact. But Jenks, who we've spoken about on here before, we've been on a couple of ultra runs with, me, Nate, and a few of the guys went for a run up the Garth a few months before Christmas, and he had a really awkward situation where he twisted his ankle. He didn't hit the deck, but he came to an abrupt stop, and it texted his emergency contact, who happened to be his recent ex-girlfriend. So his very recent ex-girlfriend then gets a message saying about him being injured or something. And so she texts him then saying, "Are you all right?" And he was like, "Ah, shit, this is awkward." So you can set it up for like injury detection and stuff like that. But it's there's definitely, I know there's things you can buy, but again, this is a separate debate altogether. You can buy things that alert people straight away, but they're bloody expensive, and we pay a lot for these watches. So it's good to have them there. But definitely look into it, Jen, because there is 100% a feature on there, I think. So
I definitely will, because I'm sorry, so if you go.
No, you go first. Go for it.
No, don't worry. Actually, no, you go.
Well, I was going to say for people who don't have these kind of watches or wearables or whatever, the kind of obvious then other thing, which Jen, I think you're nodding, you know where I'm going with this, is just running with someone. So I mean, Londoners are, I don't live in London, so I don't have big run clubs on in the evening. So but finding other people nearby to you who, or like there will be there is local run clubs in Oxford that I'm hopefully going to join. So situations like that, that's the easiest, cheapest, safest way, I guess, is if you are going to run at night, just find a friend to run with you.
100%. And I think
100%.
because the reason I always think about this recently so much is like long distance ultras, right? So like the 100-miler, like I was looking at ARC, right, like everybody else, thinking that looks so much fun and I would love to do that. And admittedly, then in my head I was like, I just put training in the dark, like the thought of that. But like that is a fundamental part of training for that kind of race, and like everyone has the right to turn up to that race having been able to train in the way that is good for them. And like learning to run in the dark for a race that you're going to have to run through the night in, it's kind of a part of it. So I always just think like getting the kit in this situation is also part of preparing for that race. And I think sometimes just looking at it that way is really important. Like in the same way that I wake up and make sure I go do my intervals work, for an 100-miler, running in the dark is a part of it. So we have to do it so that everyone is able to go and train the way they have for a race that they've really committed to doing. Like we have amazing people in the community, that like the Why We Run community, it's got some amazing girls in it. Like Lauren and Heidi are both absolutely incredible, and they both absolutely smashed ARC, but they did night runs on the coast path because they had to, because that's a core part of training. And I think the fact that they were in it together, they met with friends. I know they had like an amazing meet up on New Year's Eve with some of the Why We Run guys and like ran at 3 o'clock in the morning. But like that's the exact example of, if that's a part of your training, how do you have to be able to build that in. And if there are things like doing it with friends and having the right equipment, then think about it like planning for a race.
Something I wanted to say quickly there before I forget, that I hadn't considered, but now I am. You said about long runs and stuff, and as we're talking about live tracking and having your phone on you and that type of thing, make sure if you're on a long run, like a long run, take a portable phone charge with you. They're
Yeah.
not super expensive. You can pay a lot of money for them, or you can pay 20 quid for one. And the thing is, it only needs to give you 10 or 20% battery, so you can make a call if you need to, because it's not just for, if you're feeling unsafe or whatever, it's also for if you hurt yourself, or
Yeah, 100%.
whatever. So just always make sure you've got it on you. You can get them now. They're absolutely tiny. They're the size of your palm of your hand. And they can fully charge your phone within a matter of an hour. So you can chuck it back in your bag or in your pocket whilst it's charging, and it's just useful to have. In the same context, you can also do it for your watch. So if your watch is, the battery's getting low, it's good to have it there as well, because, it's just an extra safety feature. I was just thinking when you said about going on these really long runs.
One of my friends actually suggested the other day, which I thought was a really nice idea, which ties into this, is if you don't have, basically my running buddy from Oxford moved to Switzerland and left me, which I'm very sad about for multiple reasons. But anyway, and we were talking the other day, and she was like, why don't we just phone each other and go for a run, and we can be on the phone? Because again, then you're not running physically with someone, but you've still got someone at the end of the phone talking to you. And also I feel like if you're running talking, someone's probably going to think, oh, they're a bit weird. Say,
also great way to keep your easy runs easy. So yes,
exactly. That's so too.
Yeah.
But yeah, like situations like that, you can just, but especially in that situation, you need your phone to be charged, because if you're on a phone call for a long time, obviously your battery's gonna run low. But yeah, that's another nice way of feeling safer. There's so many ways. There is so many ways, and you've just got to kind of figure out what works best for you and what makes you feel kind of at peace when you're going out.
That's true.
Is there anything that events can do?
So I've never done an event like in the dark, but it's always, and so have you done a night? Have you done a night event?
I actually messaged my friend Britt, who I know from uni. She's the race director for Maverick, and I was messaging her literally yesterday because they do race in the dark events.
Yeah,
which I think they look awesome, and I think it's a really nice way of like turning a space that is quite a scary space into like a really, really fun.
I really want to do one.
We should do
on the trails. Like they're full trail runs, like in Sussex, they're all over.
Yeah,
I can't remember what they call them, like dark exposure or something.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But like it's like a half marathon in like on the South Downs Way, but it's in the dark, and I just think that is such a good idea. Like I absolutely love it. So definitely more of those. And yeah, I can't speak from experience of having done, a 100-miler overnight, but like just making sure there are people on course. I'm sure that lots of them already do this, but like if I was going to go do that now, it's just about having people on course that like are official people that make you feel safe and supported. I really need to go like watch ARC one year if I'm not going to run it, just to see. But that Maverick example is actually so great, like really fun, and apparently they're like really, really fun. They end with like a campfire and like pizzas and stuff. So more of that.
Yeah, they all have glow sticks. Like I saw this amazing. The reason I messaged Britt about it was because it was a runner who had done it with her son. Like they'd done the shorter into like distance, and in it he's like, "Mom, this is so great," and it's just so nice because normally you wouldn't want your kids out running in the dark, and he's there, glow sticks, running, having the best time with his mum. So I think they've absolutely nailed that. I think definitely more stuff like that to make it seem like a space we can all kind of delve into, really.
Actually, on that note, from both perspectives, from the events perspective and also from the runner's perspective, volunteering, I think, is a big thing. I know there's some amazing running companies out there, and they offer you, they do really good incentives. So you're volunteering, which means you're gaining so much experience from a run that you would potentially be looking at doing in the future. You're also getting to know loads of people and like in that area. You're also getting to scope out the routes and areas that potentially feel a little bit less safe, so that when you do go there, and there's a lot to be said for volunteering. I mean, again, this can be discussed in a different episode, but I mean, if you're somebody who wants to get into the world of ultras and whatever, they can be expensive. So actually, when you volunteer for time, you get race credit, which then immediately means you can, again, you're getting the best of both worlds. You get to meet the whole team and see how it works from behind the scenes, but you're earning race credits then to enter one of these fantastic races in the future. And there's a lot to be said for that. And yeah, I've got a friend who did the Dragons back, and for years leading up to it, he volunteered. And by the time he actually ran it, he said like he knew the course inside out, and he'd met
that's such a good idea.
It really is.
Yeah.
And can I say again, this is something relating this back to you ladies. In terms of what events could do more of, and I got to admit, I feel a bit ignorant. So I'm sorry about that in advance. What do they do in terms of like sanitary and things like that? I don't know how to put this, but you know what I mean? Like, so like for women, like obviously women are ultimately going to be running when they're on this cycle and that type of thing. So is there anything more they could do that in that sense?
I think a lot of them are actually starting to be a lot better in the last year. There's definitely like at checkpoints, some of them have sanitary towels or tampons or whatever, and also in some of the toilets at like the start of the races, they have those. It seems like it's definitely becoming a much more prominent thing nowadays. But I think just any races like that, because also as a woman, as anyone, if you're going to a trail run and you're thinking like, I need my fuel, I need my water, I need this, I need this, and need this, and obviously, so your cycle a lot of the time is regular, but sometimes it catches you when you're not expecting it, and you may be caught up in a situation like that. And I think just knowing that there's stuff there if you need it, I think that's a minimum that all races should be doing. Like, a lot are now, but I'm sure there's probably still lots that aren't. Have you been to any races?
I can't think of any races that they've had it, like I'm being honest, but I hadn't asked. So a lot of them, like, they try to be quite, discreet about it because they want to make people feel comfortable. So often you can just ask the volunteers and they'll have them. I have been at a race where a girl next to me has been like, I really need to get into the Portaloo, and people have been like, no, wait in the queue, and she's been like, I really need to get in the Portaloo. And those situations, I think having more Portaloos at checkpoints is an absolute number one for everyone. But being able to provide a situation where someone can get into a Portaloo much quicker than they otherwise might need to is really important. She Runs is an amazing campaign that does loads of stuff around this, which is also around sanitary products, but also breastfeeding mums who are running ultras who need space to go and sit. Like, women literally breastfeed their babies at checkpoints. It's incredible, and it never ceases to amaze me that women do that. And also amazing campaigning about deferrals for it might surprise you, but it's incredibly new for women to be able to defer their place in an ultramarathon because they're pregnant. A lot of the time, up until literally the last couple of years, they just lost their place.
No way. Are you kidding me?
And She Runs have done a brilliant campaign to make it so that you can defer your place because you're having a child.
Because the London Marathon, I feel like the marathon was one of the
the last people to do it. It's terrible.
Which is so bad. Because also, a lot of them, if you show that you're injured, you can defer. But bringing life into the world apparently isn't 7 months
pregnant. Get on with it.
That's shocking. That is definitely something that needs to be changed ASAP. Wow.
And I think that this completely highlights why these conversations are important just to have, because it's just knowledge sharing. I genuinely wouldn't have expected you to know that, Reese, because why would you? It's not, it wouldn't have cropped up. Your wife's not a runner, so you just wouldn't need to know. So I just think, in the same way, I wouldn't expect you to have known that we'd prefer you to not walk behind us. There's a huge element of this whole discussion that everybody, and this goes for women and beyond, every single person in the world has the responsibility to consider how their behavior affects others. In this very specific situation, we're talking about how people affect runners, but it's so applicable to life in general. Everyone needs to step back sometimes and think, did I make someone feel uncomfortable? Should I behave a different way? I think it's just important to think about why these conversations are so important, for just highlighting that we all just need to learn. And like some people, yes, need to unlearn. There's a lot of unlearning of behaviors that I think is really important. They're like systemic behaviors that generations have been going on for years and are changing. But like it's a combination of unlearning bad behaviors and all for all of us to learn new behaviors and to understand how we can make things better. And as like what I would like to call, we're the new generation, like we're a new generation, like we have responsibility to have these conversations and make sure that running for the generations, like I hope that if I have a daughter one day, she doesn't even have to think about it. Like that's all that we can hope comes from having these conversations. So
I think the thing that's also really important from like going on from what you said, Jen, is having, because I think a lot of the listeners of this podcast are runners, so like we were saying, you know, a lot of that you will just naturally get it a bit more, but you know, listening to what we talk about in this podcast and taking that away and speak to your non-running friends about it, because they're the people who don't get it because they don't run and they've not been in that situation. So although our target audience, you know, from this podcast may all be runners who are like, yeah, I already do that, like I already make sure I cross the road, or you know, X, Y, and Z. But it's like, well, actually, have you spoken to your friends about it, or your parents about it, or like your uncles and aunties, and are they aware of it? Because it's like you said, Jen, it's just changing attitudes and changing behaviors a little bit, and that applies for everyone. So it's just making these conversations more open to like the community, because also it applies like also not running. Like when I walk home sometimes from town, like I live not very far from the centre of Oxford, you know, I can walk home in 40 minutes if I want down a main road, but do I choose to do that? No. So it's even situations like that. I had a conversation with my dad about it once, and we were talking about just, you know, crossing the road. So it's not, I think it's important to say it's not just about the running community. This is just, it can be like expanded out to the general community. So
I mean, on that note, actually something that we've touched on a lot there is to raise awareness, obviously in the running community, and to non-runners and that type of thing, gym goers, whatever it is. Something I thought of then, which I'm surprised I haven't said sooner, but yeah, also raising awareness to the police and stuff. If anything happens to you and you're out and about, or you're at the gym, man or woman, and something happens to you that frightens you, that it puts you in fear and potentially might stop you from doing what you love, I hope that never happens to you. But if it does, report it, because the thing is, I think I'm not going to go down the route of stats. I don't know them, but I'm sure there's probably a lot of people who are afraid to. But by reporting these incidents, it means that agenda will be set. And actually, by you reporting it, you may not be the first person to have reported it. And it might be something that has already been looked into. And obviously, the more awareness, or the more we bring that to the attention to the authorities or to the gym or whoever, the more likely it's going to be dealt with. And it's like, for instance, I got a friend this week who went to the gym or told me a story that she went to the gym and, you know, was very inappropriate behaviors were kind of pushed on her when she was at the gym, shall we say. There was photos that were taken and stuff. And more shit needs to be done about that. That's unacceptable on any level, regardless of your gender. And so just report it. Just make sure you're reporting it, and you're reaching out to the people who need to know, because you deserve to feel safe. You deserve to be able to do what you want to do in your own space, because having that taken away from you because you're fearful of someone else is nonsense, and it shouldn't happen. And again, that is the whole point of this conversation, to just support each other, support your fellow runners, you know, support, if you go to the gym, support it. If you see something, speak out about it. So it's a very important point, I think. Thank you very much for listening to episode 6. Really hope you enjoyed this podcast and this episode. It's been our first team episode with Jen and Sophie. We've loved it. It's been super informative, and I hope you've taken a lot away from it. I know I certainly have. And just want to say thank you as well to all the guys who've tuned into previous episodes. We've had over 200 subscriptions and thousands of views, all probably down to Sophie's erection episode, but we'll brush over that. Just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's listened. It's been really good. And thank you again. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
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 Bye.